Well, very good. And so Merry Christmas, and we're actually going to play this game every week until Christmas, all right? So I encourage you to be a part of this, and you got to sign up to play. And hopefully, listen, if you win the gift and you don't need it, then give it to someone else. Bless someone else with this, all right? Our hope is, and we're actually praying that God will allow people's names to be drawn. We're not rigging it. We're allowing people's names to be drawn that could either use it or know someone that could use it. So there you go. Merry Christmas to all. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a conversation called Frightful and Delightful. And we're going to talk about things that have potential to be both frightful and or delightful in the holiday season. So what I wanted to do right now is I just wanted to open it up, and I want to say the word frightful, and I want you to call out some things that are clearly frightful when it comes to the holiday season. You ready? Go. Frightful. All right. I heard a personal attack first thing right out of the gate. I mean, just... And here we go. Now let's say the word delightful. What comes to mind immediately? Yeah, very good. Okay. Jeez. This is what happens when you give away money and then open up for yelling. Well, today I want to talk about money. And this is definitely something that has a frightful and delightful component to it in the holidays. I mean, honestly, we think about money every day. And when we're going into the holidays, really think about money. And it can definitely have a delightful component. I mean, there's a side of it when you buy a gift for someone and you watch them open it and you see the joy in their face, it brings so much delight. Generosity brings delight. But then there's also a frightful component. It's headed into the holiday seasons when you don't have enough, or the expectations are too high and you're like, I'm not sure how I'm going to balance this. Money can be a really frightful component. And so what I want to say today is right up front, this conversation today may not necessarily be a game changer for everyone in this room. For some of you in this room, you're going to hear this and you're going to be like, thank God I'm not. This message doesn't apply to me. All right? And if you're in that place, high five, congratulations, good for you. Some of you in this room are going to hear this and say, man, I'm glad, it's a good reminder. It was appropriate. Thank you, God, for making sure I was here today. And then some of you are going to hear this and say, I'm glad I heard it today because I was getting ready to make some bad mistakes tomorrow. All right? So if statistics are right, about 1/3 to 1/2 of us in this room, the teaching that we're going to give today will potentially set you free and change your holiday and next year for you, all right? So last year, Time Magazine released an article in which, in their personal finance section, and in this article, they said, they actually highlighted a report from the Corporation for Enterprise Development, and this is what the report said. Nearly half of Americans are living in a state of persistent economic insecurity that makes it difficult to look beyond immediate needs and plan for a more secure future. And then they said this, in other words, too many of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Too many of us are living, so this is not necessarily a Christian group. This is an article written by Time Magazine in their personal finance section. In other words, too many of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Let me go back and just show you this one more time because I love this phrase. And I just discovered today that I have a laser pointer. Is that not amazing? Right, so persistent economic insecurity. In other words, I'm not sure, I max out every paycheck I get. And so if something unexpected happens, man, I'm in a world of trouble. And so because we live with persistent economic insecurity, we're never really able to look beyond immediate needs and plan for a more secure future. Because we're so maxed out today, because we're so consumed with today, we're never really able to think about what happens next year, 10 years, 20 years, God willing, 50 years down the road. All right? In other words, again, they said, many of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, they said, this article said about half of Americans are living in that condition. CNN later reported that this figure was as high as 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Now whether CNN or this article that Time quoted is right, that's a lot of people that are living with economic stress in their lives. Fair enough? Whether it's 50 or 76%, it's still a lot of people. Then USA Today came along and reported this. About 36% of workers have less than $1,000 in savings and investments that could be used for retirement. That's right. That's almost 4 out of 10 people have less than $1,000 being saved for retirement. And that's aside from what their company may have saved for them. So on their own, almost 4 out of 10 people have virtually no money saved up for retirement. So if these studies are right, we are living paycheck to paycheck with no plan for retirement. And God willing, like someday we'll retire, right? Okay. I mean, hoping that Jesus comes back before you retire is not a good financial strategy. Can I get a witness? Not a good plan. And then CNN Money put out a report that says roughly 3/4 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Read this last line with me, please. With little to no emergency savings. In other words, this is what they said. Fewer than 1 in 4 Americans have enough money in their savings account to cover at least 6 months of expenses, enough to help cushion the blow of a job loss, medical emergency, or some other unexpected event. 50% of those surveyed have less than a 3-month cushion, and 27% had no savings at all. In other words, we're living paycheck to paycheck, we're not planning for retirement, and we are not ready for an emergency. And then guess what happens? Happy holidays, right? Christmas happens. There's this crisis that we call Christmas. And guess what we do in the holidays? We spend money. Listen to this. Right, remember, the majority of Americans, at least half, all right, let's go with a more conservative estimate, at least half of Americans have no plan for retirement. A significant percentage of Americans have no plan for emergency funds. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Christmas comes along, and look what the average American family will spend. The average American family will spend $271 per child. Now, I personally am going to change that. I have enough kids to change the average, right? So the average American family, though, will spend $271 per child and $882 on Christmas. Average family. You know some that spend way more. You know some that spend less. This is the average. So I want to get this straight. Just do a little bit of review here, all right? The average family is living paycheck to paycheck with little to no plan for retirement and little to no plan for an emergency. By the way, did you know that emergencies happen more often to people who are not prepared, right? Because if you are prepared, it's not an emergency then, correct? Right. Living paycheck to paycheck, little to no plan for retirement, and little to no plan for emergencies. But we're going to spend almost $1,000 for Christmas? Now, some of you are going to hear this and you're like, this is not a fun sermon. This feels like broccoli, right? If you don't know, like occasionally we'll have a conversation in our church. There's 2 kinds of sermons. There's broccoli and there's ice cream, right? Like ice cream's fun, but too much ice cream makes you large, right? Every once in a while we got to have our broccoli. Today's a little broccoli. And I always think it's important to have these conversations because my greatest hope for every single person is that we'll be in a place where we can play big and give big because we've managed the things that God has given us well. Now listen, if you read through the scriptures, one of the things we're going to talk about today is that Christians, above all other people, should be financially responsible. But what we know is if we read statistics, if we read research, is that we're kind of right in the middle of everything. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, don't answer out loud, and don't answer for anyone else. Are you happy in January with the decisions you made in December? I mean, just think back over the last couple years. And when you roll into January, do you stop and think to yourself, man, I'm really glad I did what I did for Christmas? Or do you feel like, oh, man, what was I thinking? As you roll into January. Now, a good number of people actually have regret in the new year. They start the new year with regret. In fact, last March, all right, ABC did a report And some of you are probably thinking, like, are we ever going to talk about the Bible? Yes. All right. So, but I need to kind of set this up. Last March, ABC did a report about post-Christmas debt, and this is how it started off. If you're still paying Christmas debts, it's March, it's time to take a hard look at how you're using your credit cards, and you won't be alone. Look what they said. Consumer counseling agencies see a 25% increase in the number of people seeking help in January and February, and most of that traffic is propelled to their doors by, say it with me, holiday bills that haunt consumers like the ghosts of Christmas past. In other words, most people make decisions in December that they regret in January, February, and March. And my hope is that if you're here today and you're getting ready to make some bad financial decisions, I hope I can talk you out of this. Because I know, as you know, that the decisions you make today, if they're not thoughtful and planned and prayed through carefully, they will bring you regret, and they will put handcuffs on you, not literally, but metaphorically, in January, February, March, and perhaps even longer. Now, this 25% number, it doesn't count people who should go but don't go, right? So there are more people who should actually be participating in this that don't. I mean, it really, if you think about it, here's what happens. We spend all year long living paycheck to paycheck, and then the holidays come and we're surprised by the holidays. Isn't it amazing how they creep up on us every year? I just want to give you a budgeting hint. Every December 25th, there will be something called Christmas. It happens every year, so don't be surprised next year because it's going to happen, right? But we live paycheck to paycheck, and then all of a sudden something called Christmas happens. We're like, oh my gosh, I have to go, and we spend all this money. Average family, almost $1,000, goes and spends it, and then you know what we do. So we're almost paycheck to paycheck, and then we have this huge bump in expenditures followed by a huge drop in which we spend the next several months, if not the next year, catching back up out of debt, getting back to a place where we're living paycheck to paycheck. As I think about it, and you might agree with this, when I think about all the spending we do, here's oftentimes what happens. We spend money we don't have or shouldn't spend to impress people we really don't care about or need to impress. I promise you, there have been times in your life where you've bought gifts for people that you're like, I might see them once a year, but I should get them a gift. Is that right? Am I the only one that's done that? Have you guys done that? Because this is awkward right now. I mean, that's happened to me, and if it hasn't happened to you, this is awkward, okay? Or we spend money to buy people gifts that, quite frankly, they don't need our gifts to be impressed. They just love us, right? Well, we go into crazy debt for all this stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. Like this Christmas, 2015 does not have to be that way. So we just spent the last 5 weeks talking about fear and moving through fear. And I think sometimes a lot of our Christmas spending, quite frankly, is driven by this idea of fear. There's this fear of what people will think about us if we don't get them a gift, or if we don't get them a gift equal to the one they got us. You know, I mean, have you ever had that happen? Like you buy somebody like a sweater and they buy you a TV. You're like, oh crap, I'm such a bad person. You know, so I mean, all of a sudden you start thinking about like, I've got to match gifts, right? There's this fear of if I don't get them a gift, or if I don't match their gift, what are they going to think about me? Sometimes there's a fear of being an inadequate provider, especially for guys. Single moms wrestle with this too, quite frankly. If I don't get gifts, I might be seen as an inadequate provider, and that's not okay. There's a fear of missing out. Well, I want to see my kids happy on Christmas, and if I don't get them all this stuff, then I'm going to miss out on this, right? And then sometimes there's just a fear of facing the truth that you did not plan for Christmas. And so what we do is we go ahead and make this terrible decision to join the rest of people and go into debt and spend money to get gifts for people who we either are not, don't care too terribly much about impressing, or who we don't even need to impress in the first place because we have their love. One of my most vivid and frightful Christmas memories was another Christmas year in which we did not plan. I did not take the financial initiative in my home and plan. And it was Christmas. I was surprised again by Christmas. So when I talk to you about being surprised by Christmas, I'm one of those guys who has, Christmas said boo, and I screamed because it just was like, where did that come from, right? And And it happened, and I was not prepared for it. And I remember realizing, we lived in New York, I remember realizing, Christmas is here, I have 3 daughters, and I have a wife, and I can't provide Christmas. And I'm telling you, the feelings of inadequacy, I felt like a complete failure. I felt just the feelings of just shame. I was embarrassed. I was angry. I was mad at God. And God's like, dude, I didn't do that. You did that, right? So all of these terrible feelings just whelmed over. It was a bad couple days. And finally, I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to do this to my family. They deserve better than this. So guess what I did? I went and got a credit card, and I put it all on Christmas. And we had a nice Christmas, too. We paid for that for months. We had a great day, but a lot of regret, a lot of misery, a lot of agony, a lot of, oh man, why did we do that? Followed that decision. I mean, this is what I thought. As I was in that moment, I remember this. I actually journaled about it. I was sitting there thinking like, this is crazy. I've got these beautiful 3 little girls, and I've got this wonderful wife, and I haven't planned for Christmas. I haven't done a good job. So here was the thought that came to my mind. I will push my pain down the road. I'm going to push. I'm going to experience pain. I can experience it if I'm a man and sit at the table and look at my wife and say, baby, I didn't prepare well. And look at my girls and say, baby, this year is going to be a tough Christmas. We're going to build snowmen and go sledding for Christmas. That would be tremendously painful. I could choose that pain, or I could choose to prolong the pain and push it down the road. That was the choice that I made. I pulled out our credit card and put it all on Christmas. And in January, I hated it. In February, I hated it. In March, I hated it. And I just want to save you. Some of you in this room are like, man, I don't do that stuff. I don't live like that. God bless you. Good for you. You actually should probably be up here teaching. I applaud you. But if statistics are right, a good number of us in this room have made or are getting ready to make this mistake. And I really want for you to avoid that. So, there's this sentence in the Bible that's packed to the brim with wisdom with regards to the conversation that we're having. It comes from St. Paul. It's in the book of Romans, and this is what it goes like. St. Paul writes this, Romans 13:8. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. Now just stop for just a second. And think about how good it would feel in 4 weeks if you did this. By the way, did you know how many days it is till Christmas? Oh, come on. It's 19 days. I mean, we're already hurting. Let's just pile on. It's 19 days till Christmas. Some of us in this room, some of you in this room, in the next 19 days are going to make decisions that will impact you for months. And all I'm saying is what would happen is if for the next 19 days we embrace this idea right here, owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. What if you went through this Christmas and owed nothing to anyone at the end of it? What if you went through this Christmas and rather than being in tons of debt, you said, I'm going to love really, really well this Christmas, which by the way, you can love without gifts. Did you know that? I mean, I've done both, and some of you in this room have done both as well. You have owed everyone, and you've owed no one. Which one is better? Owing no one is clearly the better option. And quite frankly, this idea of owing nothing to anyone is one of God's best ideas. If you read through Scripture, I love this idea. And Solomon, who is the legendary wise man, he tells us why this is such a great idea. Look what he says. Just as the rich rule over the poor, read this sentence with me, please. So the borrower is a servant to the lender. This is why going into debt is such a terrible idea. If you're in debt, you will be a slave to the one to whom you're in debt. I mean, they call the shots in your life. Guess what? Every month they send you a letter, and it's not a love letter. Every month they say, hey, listen, before you go and do whatever you want, you've got to pay me. And oh, by the way, you not only have to pay me what you borrowed, you've got to pay me for lending you money. So I've been thinking about this. And I thought, what would happen in our church? What would happen in this group of people if we all just made the pledge? And you're a big boy, you're a big girl. You can do whatever you want. But I thought, what would happen this year if we all just said, I'm going to make this pledge right here. I'm going to spend less money and give more love. headed into December 2016, or 2015, I'm going to spend less money and I'm going to give more love. And quite frankly, I think if we all did that, a couple things would happen. Our holidays, and certainly our post-holidays, would be a lot less frightful. I mean, think about this. Probably, you probably have had similar experiences. Some of our best Christmas experiences, some of our best Christmas memories have been those in which we spent the least amount of money. Has anybody else had that experience? And the most frightful ones are the ones where we went into significant amounts of debt. This is a really big deal. So what I wanted to do is, here's the thing, because this whole idea of going into debt so we can give people gifts for 1 month or for one day, that within a handful of months they'll forget, or they'll be in the closet, or they'll be broken, or they'll be ungrateful for, or whatever. They'll be wanting something else, right? We go into debt, and here's what happens. That brings us stress. And stressed out people have a hard time hearing God. Can I get a witness? Amen. So we're talking about money, but fundamentally we're talking about your connection to God. Stressed out people also have a hard time enjoying marriage, enjoying friends. Can I get a witness? Amen. Stressed out people also have a hard time showing up and putting their best effort out at work. Can I get a witness? Amen. I mean, this all comes back, and it's more than money. It's about your life. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to give you a handful of just quick ideas that might actually help make this Christmas a more delightful one as you think about spending less. And then I want to give you a couple ideas that might help promote your thinking when it comes to loving more. All right? Let me give you a couple ones. Spending less. What would happen if you went into this year with a January mindset? Like if right now you started thinking, before you make your purchases, before you go out and you do your stuff, you begin to think with a January mindset. Some of you might say, well, I've already made my purchases. Guess what? This is tough. You could actually take it back. If you're in debt, you could take it back. Are you happy you came today? Stuff could set you free, right? Now, think about this. Will I be happy that I made this decision in January? Or maybe better yet, will I be happy that I made this decision in March? Because a lot of people will still be paying for their December decisions in March. I mean, by that time, the kids have forgotten it and you're still paying for it, correct? Right. Just one idea. As you begin this season of shopping, as you begin through this, think with a January mindset, something else. And this is big. Not everyone gets one. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a quick route to becoming the most unpopular person at your family reunions. Right? Can I get a big who cares? All right. I mean, quite frankly, listen, if debt is your only option to get a gift for everyone, they don't need one. And if they like you less, they probably didn't like you that much to begin with. If your relationship with them is dependent upon whether you get them some crap gift, then it's not really much of a relationship anyways. So reading through Investopedia, and I really need you to see this. This is what they said. Santa has to buy presents for the whole world. You don't. Is that good news? You don't. If your shopping list includes more than 5 people outside of your immediate family, cut down on the number of people on your present list. If you have to go into debt to do this, it's probably not worth it. Not everyone gets one. Here's another idea. Their budget is not your budget. I mean, you may have to have some conversations with people before Christmas, family reunions, before Christmas parties. You may have to have the conversation. I mean, Sherry and I have had to. The bigger our family got, the less we were able to buy things for, second cousins and uncles and aunts. Right? And you may actually have to come to this realization that you cannot compete with your rich uncle who doesn't have kids and has this endless budget. You can't compete with that. So don't feel the need to. Remember what the apostle said. Owe no man anything. And if you have to go into debt to sustain a relationship, it's probably not a good relationship anyways. One last thought on this. Fear purchases come with interest and regret. Essentially, what I mean by that is, if you're making a decision or you're making a purchase because you're afraid of what others might think about you, if you don't make that purchase, listen, that relationship's in trouble. Because chances are they're going to stop thinking about you soon enough and you'll still be paying for that gift you got for them. Those aren't helpful decisions. So I encourage you not to do that. Let me do this. Let me give you a couple ideas for giving more love. Spend less money, give more love, right? Here's an idea. Spend more time with less people. What would happen this holiday season if we spent more time with less people? Now, next week, we're going to talk about that, because what is another great source of frightful / delightful in the holiday season? Family, right? People, right? Parties, I got to go here, but I really want to be here. They've invited me to go there, but I really want to hang out with this group, right? So there's this frightful, delightful component. And I'm just thinking through this, like, what would happen if we spent less time with more people? I mean, a few years ago, we realized that we were traveling more and enjoying less the holiday seasons, right? And at some point, we had to make this decision, like, this isn't right for our family. And we had this sense, like, we felt like we owed everyone our presence at their party, the presence of our body, right? Our attendance. Has anyone else ever felt like that? You feel like you owe them your attendance? This is all about boundaries. By the way, if you haven't read the book Boundaries, I encourage you to do this. If it's okay to say some no this time. Say no to more so you can say yes to less, right? And what we found is that spending less time or more time with less people has actually proven to be invigorating. Better, stronger, longer-lasting memories have been created. It's actually been delightful. It's a greater way to love. And then I would say this. Spend more time on the gifts that you choose. As you're thinking about spending less money and giving more love, the gifts that you do choose going in the holiday season, right? I just encourage you to spend more time. Listen, here's one of the things that happens. I think maybe guys are worse than this, right? Like it's December 23rd or sometimes December 24th, like, oh crap, I didn't buy anything for her. Right? I mean, guys, sorry, I don't mean to put your hand in here. So what do? Listen, we've probably every dude in this room has done this. We're like, oh man, so we run into the store, and Walgreens is usually stacked with good stuff, so we start there, right? And we look and we're like, oh, that'll be good, and that'll work, and that'll work. So what we do is we do impulse buying. Do it for our ladies, for our kids, for the people whose parties we attend that we don't even really want to be there, right? We do this stuff, and we end up spending a lot of money. So listen, I would just say, what would happen if we actually spent more time thinking through the gifts that we choose? This week, it was really cool. I watched one of my little girls. I didn't realize she had done this, but we went on our date. And this particular daughter, I'm not supposed to call it a date. I'm supposed to call it shopping. So we went shopping, and she picked out. She walked through and she picked out this item, and she picked out this item, and she picked out this item. And as she did, she said, "This is what this person wants, and this is what." And so I went home. I told Sherry, I was like, "That was really cool to watch that." And Sherry told me she has actually sat down and thought through and written down a list based on what she's heard each person over the last several months express a desire for. Like, that will mean a tremendous amount. And they're not expensive gifts, but the thought that went into that. And I just think as adults, I would just encourage you to do that, to spend more time on the handful of gifts that you do purchase. And I promise you, that will lead to a less frightful holiday season. See, here's when we do our shopping based on impulse, you know this. A decision made in seconds may have effects that will be felt for months. We grab it because we need it. We grab it because we think we haven't thought through it, but we're going to grab a little of this, a little of that, a little of this. A decision made in seconds will probably have impact that will be felt for months. Debt. Now, for some of you, you're like, yeah, I got this. Wake up, everybody wake. Some of you like, okay, that's all right. I mean, it's awesome that some are in this position. Now, some in this room, you actually do have financial margin and are prepared to bring joy to others and to a wider group of people. And you can do that because you've been wise and you've planned for, and that's amazing, and I applaud you. So normally, our church does a big impact offering at this time of year. But this year, we're going to do something different. We're actually headed into, we've been talking about it over the last several months, we're headed into a season of growth. We're going to be creating more space for more people to participate in Church 180, creating more space where people can actually discover God and connect with friends. And that's what we want to do. So in the course of the next several months, we're going to ask you to dig deep to help to create that space. And to be honest with you, I just don't feel good about asking you to dig deep twice, right? There's something about it. It just feels like, I'm going to stand up here at Christmas time and say, let's go big for big impact offering. Dig deep, let's go big. And then turn around in a couple months and going to ask the same thing. It just doesn't feel right. But it is Christmas, and we do like to spread joy. So here's what we're going to do this holiday season. We are going to partner with Evanport Elementary. And we're working with them we're in the final stages of identifying 3 to 5 families who simply will not have a Christmas if we don't engage. And we're working with we're working through a screening process with the principal and the guidance counselor, et cetera, to make sure that we identify a handful of genuinely needy families. And we're going to bring Christmas to them with our gifts. And additionally, this week, the food pantry at Evanport Elementary was emptied out completely, which is it's a normal thing. It's a good thing, right? We want people to be using the foods and using the toiletry items that we stock the pantry with. And this week, as we're going into the Christmas holiday season, it was emptied out. Again, we planned for that, not a bad thing. So we also want to take this offering and we want to restock that pantry to start off the new year. So here's how this happens. Next week, which is the 13th, typically what happens is we do our big impact offering on December 13th. And usually that offering is split between projects here in the church and service in the community. This year, however, we're going to, on December 13th, we're going to ask you just to bring an offering, and whatever that offering is, we're going to invest in those families. We'll have information for you on next week about those families, the 3 to 5 families. And so basically what we want to do is we'll give that to you next week. And on the 20th, okay, stop. I just confused myself with all those dates. Forget, everybody ready? Wait. All right. I started talking, I'm all over the place right now. All right, so let me start again. What happens is next week when you come into church, there's going to be information about these family members and what their age is and what is it that they're hoping for Christmas. All right, we're working with the families to identify that. And we're going to hand that out to you next week. And so our hope is that over the course of our entire church, we can take care of Christmas for this handful of families, okay? And so we'll give that to you next week, the 13th. And we're asking that you spend that week and get these gifts and bring Christmas to these kids and bring it back on the 20th. And the 20th is when we'll actually collect all this stuff and take it to those homes, as well as do a big shop for the food pantry. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Good. So this is actually our opportunity to bring joy to our community and to families who won't have it if we don't engage. Now, having said all that, if you're going to go into debt to do that, don't. Okay? Owe no man anything, but give lots of love. So, what I want to do is I want to wrap up today, and I want to pray for all of us that we'll embrace this idea for the next handful of weeks, and that it'll actually change the way we move into January of 2016. Are you ready? Let's stand up together, and I'm going to pray, and then we're going to go. God, thank you for gifting us with Jesus. You gave him to us to bring light to our darkness and drive fear to the sidelines of our lives. You also gave us the gift of your Bible, which is packed with wisdom, like what we learned today. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. Forgive us for making unwise decisions in the past that have made us slaves to people who neither know nor care about us. This year, God, give us wisdom and courage as we decide how and on whom to spend money. Remind us regularly of your love for us. It's a love that's not based on the size of our gift to you. Thank you for knowing us fully and loving us completely, Father. I pray that this Christmas we'll have much less fright and a lot more delight. And Father, we pray one more thing, that you would remind us constantly through this season of your Son, Jesus. Remind us to honor him with the way that we live, and particularly, Lord, with the way that we handle the monies with which you've entrusted us. We say these things today to you, God, with humility and gratitude. In Christ's name, amen.